There's something about unexplored corners of a cinematic universe that captivates fans. Sure, main characters are great, but what about this random side character who only appears on screen for like 2 seconds? What's his deal? We see this same literary impulse in religious literature as well, especially with the character Enoch in the Hebrew Bible. According to the Book of Genesis, he's the great-grandfather of Noah, but he's a peripheral character at best, introduced in passing with only a few lines dedicated to him. Enoch walked with God, then he was no more because God took him. From this vague but intriguing passage, Enoch later emerges as the central character in a collection of ancient texts, who position him as a hero who learns secret knowledge and travels to the heavens. On this channel, we've already examined 2 of these so-called enochic texts. The First Book of Enoch is a compilation of texts with the oldest dating to somewhere around the 3rd century BCE. The first and oldest section, the Book of the Watchers, tells a story about a group of angels who descend to Earth, take human wives, who birth a race of giants called the Nephilim. It basically expands on the events surrounding the flood story in the Book of Genesis. Next, there's the Second Book of Enoch. Dating possibly to the 1st century CE, it's a remake or retelling of 1st Enoch, maintaining the essential elements of 1st Enoch but with a few twists. But there's also a Third Book of Enoch, the final installment in the trilogy. But it's a very different book from the other 2, particularly because in this book, Enoch achieves his greatest power level yet. Enoch turns into an archangel second only to God, an archangel called Metatron. Third Enoch belongs to a very different historical context compared to 1st and 2nd Enoch. It's much later. Most scholars date 3rd Enoch to around the 5th to 6th centuries CE. By contrast, 1st Enoch, and probably 2nd Enoch as well, date to the Second Temple period of Jewish history. This era saw the rise of Jewish apocalypticism, a movement that developed ideas like a messianic figure will soon arrive and overthrow the current world ruled by evil, ushering in a new kingdom. In these apocalyptic texts, we see the development of ideas like heaven and hell, angels and demons, and an apocalyptic battle between good and evil at the end of days. All of the sort of stuff that gave rise to Christianity, which explains why 1st Enoch in particular was so popular among early Christians. They saw a lot of their own theology in that book. The New Testament even quotes 1st Enoch in the Book of Jude. And though 3rd Enoch does draw on apocalyptic ideas, it was composed hundreds of years after the destruction of the Second Temple, within the context of Rabbinic Judaism. And so a lot of the ideas that we see in 3rd Enoch are in conversation with Rabbinic texts, which leads us to its genre. The name 3rd Enoch is a modern academic name. Some academics are actually kind of annoyed that it's called 3rd Enoch. The text is actually called Sefer Hechalot, which in Hebrew means the Book of Palaces, specifically referring to the heavenly palaces. It's called this because 3rd Enoch claims to be the first-hand account of a man named Rabbi Ishmael, describing his mystical ascent into heaven, where he views the heavenly palaces and the throne chariot of God. This throne is described in the Hebrew Bible in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 1. In the early centuries of Rabbinic Judaism, Jewish writers were increasingly writing accounts of these heavenly journeys, which comprise a body of literature called Merkavah mysticism, or chariot mysticism, and the overlapping genre called Hechalot literature. So this is the literary and historical context of 3rd Enoch, Rabbinic Jewish mysticism. The character Rabbi Ishmael in 3rd Enoch was a historical Jewish rabbi who lived during the late 1st century and early 2nd century. But remember that 3rd Enoch dates to the 5th century at the earliest, so Rabbi Ishmael definitely did not write this text. Whoever wrote it used Ishmael as the point of view character. Through him, we the audience behold the mysteries of heaven that were revealed to him. So let's get into the content. We can break 3rd Enoch down into 4 sections, seen here on screen. The first section sets the stage with the ascension of Ishmael into heaven. The next section, the exaltation of Enoch, describes Enoch's dramatic transformation into the angel Metatron. The third section describes the heavenly household, basically the bureaucratic organization of heaven. This section describes the hierarchy of different types of angels, as well as descriptions of specific archangels and the domains that they oversee. And in the final section, the sights of heaven, Ishmael is shown the inner workings of the universe, like where lightning, thunder, and rain come from, and where human souls are created and how they go to and from Earth. Third Enoch is a fairly long text, so rather than going through each section exhaustively, let's focus on major themes that run through the whole thing. First, the setting. Like I said, Third Enoch is a tour of heaven, conceptualized as divided into 7 heavens, a series of 7 palaces arranged one within the other. This is a construct shared in other Jewish mystical texts of the time, and virtually the whole text takes place within the 7th heaven, the innermost palace. In the first chapter, the text opens with Ishmael's ascent, and it just skips through the first 6 palaces. When I ascended to the height to behold the vision of the chariot, I entered 6 palaces, one inside the other, and when I reached the door of the 7th palace, I paused in prayer before the Holy One. So within the innermost palace is the Merkavah, God's throne, which, as I said earlier, is conceptualized as a chariot. If you read Third Enoch, you'll find that the style is grandiose. It's a description of heaven, after all. It's filled with evocative and sometimes over-the-top descriptions that are clearly meant to amaze the audience. For example, when describing God's divine presence, Third Enoch says that it's like a bright cloud that used to shine on Earth 365,000 times more brightly than the sun. Third Enoch loves gigantic numbers. A river of fire flows out from beneath the throne, and the fire surges when angels sing before God. And in fact, the text says that angels are bathing in its fires. The whole sight of God's throne room with a river of fire and blinding light everywhere and the reverberation of angels singing, it's so overwhelming that Rabbi Ishmael faints. He falls down trembling. And even when he's revived, he says, "Still I had not strength enough to sing a hymn before the glorious throne until an hour had passed." The scholar Philip Alexander even theorizes that Third Enoch's repetitive, highly emotive literary style was possibly meant to induce ecstasy in the reader, induce a mystical experience. Though there aren't any mystical hymns in the text like what we see in other examples of Merkavah mysticism, nor does Third Enoch include any instructions on how to do this heavenly journey yourself, which makes me question how practical the text was intended to be. Regardless, Third Enoch's lavish, hyperbolic style is clearly designed to stretch human imagination to its limits. The book is an attempt to convey to the audience a transcendent experience by describing a realm of overwhelming brilliance. Another major component of Third Enoch is angelology. It includes lengthy descriptions of different classes of angels, as well as descriptions of specific archangels, powerful beings with specific roles in heavenly society. For example, the Archangel Radwariel is the heavenly archivist, the keeper of the Book of Records, who personally hands the scroll to God. Third Enoch also uses angels to describe natural phenomena. Angels control the elements. There's an angel of hail, an angel of wind, an angel of lightning, snow, rain, and so on. There are also specific angels assigned to control the sun, moon, and stars respectively, literally guiding them through the sky. Basically, Third Enoch provides an understanding of the universe as being under orderly angelic control. Third Enoch also mentions 7 ranks of angels, with common angels on the bottom. The highest ranking angels are the Holy Ones and the Watchers. There are 2 angels designated as Holy Ones and 2 as Watchers, and the 4 of them together act like a divine council. The text says God does nothing in this world without first taking counsel with them. Now, some of you might be thinking about the so-called biblically accurate angel memes, but it seems that at least the higher angels have human form. For example, chapter 22 describes the body of the Archangel Kerubiel, the angel in charge of the cherubim. And though he's described as a fiery being with a body full of burning coals, the text goes to great length to describe human features, like hands, feet, and legs. His eyelashes are the splendor of lightning, his eyes like brilliant sparks, and his face looks like a burning fire. I can only imagine any artistic representation of these angels would look like something from a comic book. So the intricate angelology of Third Enoch basically describes a heavenly bureaucracy and offers a glimpse into how heaven functions and how the heavenly household runs the universe. But the most captivating element of this text revolves around a single celestial figure, the Archangel Metatron. Now, why he's called Metatron is a mystery. The name possibly comes from the Latin metator, which was a military officer who would go ahead of the army and prepare the camp. The word could also be generally used to describe anyone who goes on ahead. Another theory is that Metatron comes from the Greek metatyrannos, the one next to the ruler, or related from the Greek metathronon, next to the throne. But there's no consensus, and it's also possible that the name is just made up. If you read Jewish magical texts like Sefer HaRazim, people loved making up archangel names. When Rabbi Ishmael reaches the gate to the seventh heaven, he's allowed to enter only when escorted by Metatron, who serves as Ishmael's tour guide for the entire book. When Ishmael asks about Metatron's identity, we learn that the Archangel is none other than our hero Enoch. The angel says, "I am Enoch. When the generation of the flood sinned and turned to evil deeds, God took me from their midst to be a witness against them in the heavenly height. And God appointed me in the height as a prince and a ruler among the ministering angels." The second section of the book, the exaltation of Enoch, is basically an expansion of that little passage from Genesis. While Genesis simply says that Enoch was taken, Third Enoch describes a dramatic process of Enoch transforming into an angel. In this section, Enoch's transformation actually does somewhat resemble those biblically accurate angel memes. In a section ominously titled, "Enoch is enlarged," the text says, "God laid his hand on me and blessed me with 1,365,000 blessings." Yeah, again, Enoch loves big numbers. "I was enlarged and increased in size until I matched the world in length and breadth. He made to grow on me 72 wings, and he fixed in me 365,000 eyes." So Enoch becomes this gigantic eye-filled being. Then the ultimate dramatic transformation occurs. Third Enoch chapter 15. "At once my flesh turned to flame, my sinews to blazing fire, my bones to juniper coals, my eyelashes to lightning flashes, my eyeballs to fiery torches." You get the picture. The entire substance of his body transforms into blazing fire. In the words of the scholar Peter Schaeffer, Enoch's human existence is finally and completely extinguished. He is transformed into the angel Metatron. God then makes for him a throne, royal robes, a crown, and puts him in charge of the entire angelic host. Any angel who has anything to say in my presence should go before him and speak to him. Basically, God is the king, but Metatron is his vice-regent. But the text goes even further. God calls Metatron the lesser god, using his own four-letter name to describe Metatron. So it might be more accurate to view this transformation as an apotheosis. He doesn't simply transform into an angel, he becomes like God. It says all of the angels fell down before him because of his majesty, splendor, and radiance. He rules and judges all of the heavenly host. You could understandably interpret this as above the pay grade of an angel. Maybe we're dealing with a form of bitheism, with Metatron as a second god. I wouldn't blame you for thinking this because some ancient readers must have thought this as well. We know this because there are a few ancient Jewish texts that either try to downplay the importance of Enoch or downplay the importance of Metatron. For example, a text called the Genesis Rabbah, which dates a few hundred years before Third Enoch, explicitly argues that Enoch actually died, and anyone who believes that he was miraculously transferred into heaven is a heretic. One rabbi in the text even declares Enoch to be a wicked man, and another says that Enoch was a hypocrite, acting sometimes as a righteous and sometimes as a wicked man. Scholars think that this passage is pushing back against the Enoch fan club, trying to advance the theory that Enoch simply died an ordinary death. As for the anti-Metatron texts, one of them actually appears inserted into Third Enoch. Right after that dramatic chapter 15, when Enoch turns into a being of fire, chapter 16 includes an odd digression that walks that all back. Another rabbi named Elisha ben Abuya ascends into heaven and beholds the throne of God. When he sees Metatron seated beside God, he blurts out, "There are indeed two powers in heaven." In other words, there are two gods. Sounds kind of heretical. Metatron is then punished for prompting this mistake. He's struck with 60 lashes of fire. Scholars think that a later editor added this chapter, basically trying to back off of the idea that Metatron is a second god, which is explicitly said in the previous chapters. The whole chapter sounds like it's manufactured to debunk this idea. That character, Elisha ben Abuya, is notorious in Jewish history as a heretic, so of course that's the character used here to shout the heretical statement, "There are two powers in heaven." A very similar story appears in the Babylonian Talmud, when again the rabbi beholds Metatron in heaven and misidentifies him as God. So there must have been some Jews during this period that revered Metatron to such a degree that it might have approached some type of bitheism, two powers in heavenism, which has some historical precedent. Bitheistic ideas are found within Second Temple Jewish literature, starting with a famous vision in the book of Daniel. "I saw one like a son of man coming with the clouds of heaven." This Son of Man character was presented to God and was given dominion and glory and kingship that all peoples, nations, and languages would serve him. which could be interpreted as having godlike power and dominion. This mysterious Son of Man figure is possibly meant to be some powerful angelic being. The scholar Peter Schaeffer argues that the Son of Man in Daniel is the Archangel Michael himself, elevating him almost to godlike status. In fact, interestingly enough, some have argued that Michael and Metatron were originally considered to be the same angel, with Metatron being the more esoteric, magical name for Michael. Speculation around the Son of Man continued for centuries after the Book of Daniel. The Dead Sea Scrolls also mention angelic and human beings elevated to godlike status, as does, obviously, early Christian literature, by elevating Jesus to divine status. So the idea of two powers in heaven is there for centuries, and reaches its climax in Third Enoch. So as a work of spin-off literature, Third Enoch not only vastly expands on Enoch's brief appearance in the book of Genesis, but also vastly expands on the vision of God's throne from Ezekiel chapter 1, describing every facet of creation as under the control of an angelic bureaucracy, with God as its king and Metatron as its vice-regent. In the following centuries, Metatron continues to be a prominent character in Jewish magical and mystical traditions, and he even appears within esoteric Islamic traditions as well. We'll dive into this topic in a future video, but in the meantime, if you want to learn more about Islamic practices, I recommend Wendover Productions' recent video on the logistics of the Hajj. It's a deep dive into how the infrastructure of Mecca and the Saudi government handle the huge influx of millions of pilgrims each year, and you can watch it exclusively on Nebula. Nebula is a streaming platform built by and for creators, where you can watch exclusive content from a bunch of your favorite educational creators. You might remember a few months ago that I joined Nebula as one of their creators as well. And the great thing about Nebula is that my audience there watches all of my videos ad-free and sponsor-free. And because Nebula is owned and operated by the creators, it means that we not only have more creative freedom, but you directly support the creators when you sign up. Nebula is doubling down on Nebula Originals. These are ambitious, high-quality projects exclusive to Nebula. A great example is Philosophy Tube's play The Prince. This is a high-budget, professional recording of a stage play made possible by Nebula. When you sign up for Nebula, you also get access to Nebula classes. I've watched a lot of these classes myself because many of them are how-to guides where my fellow Nebula creators explain their content creation process. Learning from these classes has made me a better creator, just learning about their workflows. Until the end of the month, we're offering lifetime memberships for $300. And this is available both to new signups and existing subscribers. But I know this promotion is not for everyone. The best deal is actually the annual plan, which is 40% off if you sign up using my link pinned in the comments below. Thanks everyone, hope to see you on Nebula.